Advent morning, we light the candle of peace. Let it remind us to prepare our hearts for the coming of Christ.
All right, well, good morning, Well Church family. So glad that you are with us this morning. It is Sunday morning, November 29th, day one of Advent. And hopefully all of you are enjoying your morning and enjoying your day of Sabbath and rest. Hopefully you've gotten your books, the Via Advent. I am super excited to read this book again and just spend some time as a family, just reading it together and connecting together as a church. By the way, if you haven't picked up your book yet, there's still time to run out to the church, and the book is waiting for you to pick it up. And so we hope that you get a chance to do that. But I'd like to introduce you to Sean Small. Sean Small, he's right over here, but he's the author of the Via Advent and also a friend of mine. And I don't say that lightly. Everyone's not a friend of mine, but he and I have actually traveled halfway across the world together. We spent a few weeks in South Sudan and in Kenya and Congo, and kind of went all over during that time. But he is definitely a friend of mine, and I'm thankful that he's a friend of mine, but also thankful to have him with us this morning. Sean Small is a Renaissance man. He's done a lot. He's traveled the world. He's probably the most traveled person I know. But he's not just a traveler, but he's an author and does a lot of other things as well. But Sean, welcome, and thank you for being with us today.
Man, it is great to be here, especially with you, Trey, because we've worked together a long time.
We have
doing trips together all over the place for a long time. And I'm a big fan of the Well and what's happening. You guys are right down the road. I'm up in Corinth, so you're not too far away.
I love it.
I still go to Irving Bible Church, but man, we love what you guys are doing out there.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Well, first of all, I want to ask you, we talked about travel. Normally I'm asking people, where in the world have you been? But for you, where in the world haven't you been? Because you've been like almost everywhere.
Yeah, well, you think that. I mean, I have been to 85 countries, and last year for my 50th birthday, I hit my 7th continent. So I did a scientific cruise down in Antarctica, where you're actually landing on the continent. I actually got a chance to, at one point, I won a contest on the boat, and for an hour, I got to actually steer the boat in between Antarctica and South America. So yeah. Where I haven't primarily been, that I really want to go, I haven't been to a lot of Asia. So that's kind of on my radar for the future. I would love to hit like deep into Asia.
That's awesome. That's cool, man. Yeah, you've done some really, really cool things. And you're actually recording from, I think you're recording from Guinness, believe it or not. Is that where you are? It looks like behind you.
From where?
You know the museum?
I do have, my office is a museum of oddities from all around the world. So yeah, I have stuff, obviously, that even when I traveled with you, I'll collect a little thing here or there. It's got to tell a story, but I'll collect something, in the places that I go. If I'm not collecting stories, that's what I'm collecting, is a little trinket here and there. So yeah, it's a bit strange behind me.
That's awesome. It's awesome. I love it. I bet some really, really cool stories behind it too. One day we need to talk about those. But we are here to talk about this book that we are super excited to read, The Via Advent. And so it's actually a part of a series, but I'd love to know what motivated you to write this book, but also this series.
So I started the series, started writing it in the early 2000s. When I finally had my manuscript for the Via Crucis, which is a very similar devotional that follows the story of Lent, the last 36 hours of Jesus' time before the crucifixion. Mm-hmm. I took that manuscript before it was going to the publisher to Jerusalem. I walked the Via Dolorosa till I got to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Yeah. And at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, I had different men and women there pray over that manuscript. But then it hit me, I'm not that far from Bethlehem. So I decided it, this is kind of the middle of the story. Then we get into the book of Acts, which gets into that, and we're still in that story. But I was like, oh, let's go a little bit farther back to where Jesus was born. And I remember just sitting there in that church, oh man, Mary and Joseph took that baby from Bethlehem. How far is Bethlehem? So I just started walking. And it's 6 miles from the old Temple Mount down to Bethlehem, but you have to go through into the West Bank. So it's really high security, and it was really tense at times. And I took this walk through the desert along roads to the Church of the Nativity, the traditional site where the cave where Jesus would have been. Right. And as I did that walk, which was all day, so I probably left at 8 a.m, probably didn't get back until about 10 p.m. In that time. And this story just swirled in my head. So the basis of these books are little 5-minute devotional readings. But when we read the Bible and we read the story in 2 or 3 pages, unless you really dig in and understand the language and get down to what the culture was, you miss so many amazing details of all the people that had an interaction within this story. So I'd done that for the Via Crucis, which was the first book. So this was the book number 2. And I guess I kind of wrote the book in my head the whole time, those 10, 12 hours walking back and forth. Didn't have anything to write down, just kind of in my head. And I remember getting back to my hotel room that night and then just furiously writing this down. Took me another year to go through the scriptures of the birth of Jesus. But I think one of the things that really hit me, Trey, is I wasn't raised in a tradition where, to me, Christmas was one day. Like, we went one day. It was one big day a year. And you always, I think we all learned the Christmas story. If we weren't raised in church, we definitely learned it from Charlie Brown. Like, that was where we learned it. And so it was one big day. It was an exciting day, and you went to church. But there's a much older church tradition, which we call the Advent period. Same where we get the word adventure. It's that period of time that leads up to the birth of Jesus, and then even goes into the story into what we call Epiphany, the next 12 days, that goes into up to the point where Jesus is about 2 or 3, and they flee to Egypt for a period of time, Mary and Joseph and Jesus. So this is these little individual snippets, maybe digging a little bit deeper into the characters that were in the story, what Mary was feeling, what about the angel, what was Joseph going through, and it hits it in a really human way, a way that maybe we can relate to even better. And it was written in a way that it's really great for families. So a lot of times, I mean, you've done it, this, but a lot of times you could read it as an individual thing, but a lot of families read it at night. They read it, as a family before dinner or as their Advent practice. There's an audiobook form. So some, you can go on Amazon and get that. And some families just listen to it. They're listening to 5 or 6 minutes of that. Plus it's all mixed in with our kind of traditional Christmas music and the rich tradition we have with that where those Christmas songs tell the story, but we all know those songs, really kind of diving deep into it. So yeah, it was very fun. I wrote it 2 years after the first book, and it's just been one of those books that I hear about every year because people read it. It's kind of part of their tradition every year.
Yes, I love it. Awesome. You kind of talked a little bit about, some families use it, some individuals use it for their devotional, but how would you recommend we walk through this book over these next few weeks?
Sure. I think, again, decide whether it's best as a family. And I would say for the family, again, if you have somebody who likes to read, have the different family members read one night. The way that it's written is it starts with the scripture, a passage of scripture from the story. Then you tell the story, and then there's a prayer at the end. A lot of times those prayers are mixed in with kind of Christmas music. So it's easiest just to sit down and read it as an individual, maybe in the morning before you start the day. Let this be your devotional through the Christmas season, or with the family. And again, if nobody likes to read, get the audiobook. But I think you have to take a little bit of time to slow down. It's just like you're just taking 10 minutes to acknowledge that this season is not about the gifts we get under the tree. This is about hope. This starts as a story that seems in a time where there was no hope, in a time where people felt trapped, in a time where people felt they couldn't go anywhere in their lives, which is how we're feeling right now. And it leads to the most hopeful story that has given us hope for the last 2,100 years. Will continue to give humanity hope. So I think you have to make it important for you or your family to take 10 minutes aside and do that. Now, for some families, maybe you want to have a discussion question. Some families, you might just want to hear the story, but then sit for maybe 30 seconds of silence. Let it kind of soak in. Let people ask questions. I think each family has to really be organic in the way that they do it. But the main thing is, please pull 10 minutes aside a day for the next, 27, 28 days and do that. The way it's written, if you start this Sunday, you do have a couple of extra days in there because we're starting a little later than normal, but it'll work right up to the Christmas story. One day you might have to read a couple stories together. That will lead right up to the Christmas story, the birth of Jesus that falls on Christmas. And then anyone who wants to go on after that, we kind of get into the story of the wise men, what happened with that. And that goes on after Christmas. But really just focus for the next 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks on 10 minutes a day to really soak in the hope, our hope of this story.
Awesome. If that doesn't, well, family, if that doesn't excite you to want to read this book, I don't know what will. Sean, thanks for your time. Thanks for writing this book, and we're excited to engage with it and learn from it. Thanks, man.
So excited for you guys. Thank you. Can't wait to hear.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.